Welcome back to another episode of Voices of Video. I am super excited for this guest, Mark Mahle, who is one of the co-founders and CEO of NetActuate. Now, Mark and I over dinner at NAB realized that we both have a passion for things that go fast. So welcome, Mark. Maybe we'll have to do another episode on cars and motorcycles and that kind of stuff. But hey, welcome to Voices of Video.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, for having me. That's right. Whether it's cars or motorcycles or, transcoding or encoding on a VPU, we definitely like things that go fast.
We like things that go fast. Now, if it's not powered by electricity in a data center, speaking of like VPUs, I prefer four wheels, but I know that, based on what you told me, you have quite the two-wheel collections.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, for me, honestly, if it goes, and really that's like land, air, or sea, I'm into it. So any number of wheels, a saddle, a propeller, hey, they
That's
go fast.
amazing. I don't think I knew. So are you a pilot?
I'm not a pilot. My wife is a pilot. It's on my list. I sail, and yeah, love motorcycles, cars.
Incredible. Yeah. My dad was a pilot. So I grew up in an aviation household. I used to joke while my friends were doing the cool stuff with their dads, like hunting and fishing, because I grew up in Colorado. So, they were doing all the cool stuff. I was at the airport. And actually, I didn't mind it. I thought it was cool, but, sometimes it's a little annoying. We're, literally on family trips or whatever. And my dad would see just a local regional airport. And 9 times out of 10, it's like there's a detour. We'd stop at the airport. He'd go meet the FBO operator. It was just like, we'd get a little tour, invariably there was some cool, airplane hanging out in the back corner of a hangar somewhere. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. That's an interesting note. I mean, it really is the Mark and Mark show today. I was actually born in Colorado, so we've got something else.
Really? Wow. Okay. All right. And I know we were comparing before we hit record that we both taught ourselves basic, reading some of those very, very early PC and I wouldn't even say home computer, personal computer, hobby computer magazines,
Yeah.
almost were self-published. Some of these, the audience was just so small back in the days.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I think a lot about how far we've come and how fast we're moving now,
That's
especially.
right.
I've been in the industry for a long time, and I think it's just such an exciting time to be alive and to be involved in what we're doing.
Yeah, very, very cool. I saw a post today from, industry luminaire we all know from Dave Ronca that he was commenting about, I think his first like computer science classes, maybe freshman year. And it took me back, and how he was handwriting. And I believe he was even punching cards. Well, guess what? 1986. Colorado State University, when I would go into the computer lab, I would stand in line to get cards punched. Now, I'm dating myself, but at the same time, I was learning Fortran, COBOL, and wow, Pascal. That was the new modern language.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was sharing with you my co-founder, started a YouTube channel called The Serial Port, and so if you like vintage computing,
Very
and
cool.
want to see these things work, we actually operate a computer museum in Raleigh, North Carolina, that you're welcome to
Amazing.
come visit. You can probably punch some cards actually if you want.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. We the card punch was just to get the experience. So in reality but I did have to turn in some projects and I turned in my cards. Like that was the assignment, the deliverable, So and it had to run.
Yeah,
Boy, those are the days. It's like, kids today, they've discovered like vinyl records. They've discovered, there's this, I guess move to nostalgia in a way. But, there is something about the physicality, of those experiences, which is why, I actually do believe vinyl, it just sounds different. You can say it sounds better. I believe it sounds better, but it sounds different, and there's something about the experience, of taking the record out, putting it and, getting the needle on the groove and dropping it down. And, so, all right. Well, enough nostalgia. Let's talk about you and about the company that you have built and NetActuate. So we're just, I guess, 3 weeks or so past NAB. It was an amazing show. I know that you guys, were book solid, a lot of activity around the cloud, but really this whole idea of infrastructure as a service. And so, without further ado, why don't you give the story? Who is NetActuate? How did you come to be? What do you do? And then we're going to move right into some over the shoulder demos, which are quite cool. So for the viewers, don't click away. And if for some reason you're listening to this in audio, this is an episode you're probably going to want to go back and watch on YouTube or watch on LinkedIn. You're going to want to see the video. But tell us about NetActuate.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mark. I wasn't expecting to get so philosophical to kick things off, but it's great.
I know.
I agree. I mean,
I think that's the first time we've done that here on Voices of Video. So that's kind of fun.
yeah, and I have direct experience. My son was very into vinyl. He's off at college. My daughter's going to college now. And interestingly, she and her generation got stuck on CDs. I was like, why are you buying all these CDs again that
Wild.
yeah, they just love. So
Yeah.
I think the Walkman, right? Didn't Sony release that? It was like $2,000. They released it a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, a big price.
Okay. All right. The last nostalgia. So I actually didn't finish my computer science degree. I decided I wanted to be a rock star, and so I went to music schools. So I switched colleges, switched universities, and I did 2 years computer science, and I went and finished the rest of my time, in music. I spent, I think it was $300 of my student loan money because $300 back then, well, I mean, it's still $300 is nothing to laugh at, but it was a lot of money. Like my rent, I think was like $125, that I was sharing a house with a couple guys, so like I was spending the equivalent of almost 3 months rent on this really high end. And it was a Sony Walkman, but it was one of their, I don't remember the model number, but it was high end. And of course, I'm a music major, so I really cared about audio quality, but it was super small, super compact. It was one of those that, you could shake it and the pitch wouldn't change, those things with cassette tape. Boy, I love that thing. I had it for many, 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 many years, but anyway, interesting time. Let's talk about NetActuate.
Yeah. So, I started my career, 30 plus years ago now. And, I guess if there's an origin story, I came to Silicon Valley in 99, right at the tail end of the boom, saw some incredible things and then the bust. And, I do think about that today. I mean, when people talk about AI and, where we are, oh, this feels, unreal. It feels similar. I think the difference is that, we are using more and more of this. Like technology, it's just a ubiquitous part of our lives, right? Whether it's AI, whether it's what you're watching with streaming. I mean, we couldn't survive, right, without the technology that we have today. And back in 2000, that really wasn't the case. And so I was fortunate to work at a couple startups that were, very successful. One was acquired by Cisco. Another, went public, was bought, went public again, spun out, and I think now has been bought again. But through that experience, was I really got to experience what it was like to work with smart people that were parts of amazing teams.
Yes.
And so when I kind of left that career, or when I left that industry, I guess, at least in terms of locations, I thought about what I wanted to do. And that was really build something that would be based on partnerships. And so that's the very early origin story, I guess, of what we've become today, which is really focusing on engineering and partnering with smart teams that are building things. So yeah, happy to go into more detail.
Yeah, amazing. So why don't you give a brief explanation of what your offering is, the platform, as well as then who you serve, and then how, then that will connect to the partnership with NetInt and VPUs that are being integrated in your data centers now. And then, then we'll want to see a demo. We'll want to actually see, what you built. But
Sure.
yeah, start
Yeah.
start start with the offer. What is it that you even have?
Yeah. So I think just going back to, how we approach things and how I think about the world, not to be too philosophical, but at the core, the way I describe what we do is it's really about facilitating communication. All of this technology that we have today, it's only valuable because we can do what you and I are doing right now, right? We're on in different states or different parts of the world. We're talking to each other. We can see each other, hear each other, and so if you look me up, it's kind of a joke, right? But I make my title chief plumber, and it's because I like to deal with the plumbing of things, right? It's that facilitation. And so NetActuate, in its name, right, we're a network first, and we're the fourth largest network in the world by number of peers. And that's other networks that we connect to. We're the second largest in the United States, and we're really about facilitating that communication between people and the technology that they use. And so an actuator is something that moves something forward. And so our name means to move something forward with the network. What does the network facilitate? Well, it's all kinds of things. It's compute, right? It's different types of services that people are building. And so that's really what our focus has been. We've just celebrated 10 years as NetActuate proper. And we're now in 45 plus global markets, 22 in North America, but we're, on every major continent and every major media market. And we really power a tremendous number of services around the world. So, yeah, I mean, a typical customer of ours is, multinational company that has things that, they need infrastructure in North America and Europe and Africa and South America, Asia, or some combination of all of those things. And we're really like this company that most people haven't heard of because of that partnership and that engineering approach. So, we power over 60% of the world's TLDs. So domains, if you just type in, netint.com, your
Interesting.
request is actually routing through our network to figure out where do I go to get to .com as an
Wow.
example.
Wow.
And, we've largely operated sort of on the B2B, the enterprise and the security space.
Yeah. So how did you, make the leap or get into video, get into media, get into streaming?
Yeah, if I think back personally, it's funny. That first startup that I worked for back in 2000 was a company called WebEx, which you
Yeah,
may be familiar with. Uh, I,
absolutely.
I was responsible for like telecom, partner APIs, and we had a lot of things that we had to solve there with video. That was pretty
Yeah.
interesting, and just how does video flow over the network? How is it real time? Uh, you know, uh, and I think from a network perspective, what flows through the network doesn't necessarily matter, but when it comes to video, right, it really can. And so our focus on latency, some of the tooling that we have for the kind of high performance customers that need to operate things all over the world today it was really clear to us that there's a strong use case there for video. And so that's why we started to look at this space in particular and look at, how we can approach more real-time video on demand transcoding from a service perspective, as opposed to maybe just, CDNs and security and kind of the other things that don't have as much of that component to it.
Yeah, understand. And so I think probably listeners at this point are saying, wow, sounds interesting, but help them understand how exactly does your offer compare to a public cloud as an example. Just, I'm going to say infrastructure as a service type offerings, or even just a colo data center. Where do you fit on that, dare I say continuum, from like public cloud to like just a colo, and everything in between? Where do you fit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say you've kind of underscored it. It's all of those things, and I'll describe how. But really, again, it starts with the network. It starts with facilitating that communication between those. And then it also starts with choice. So coming out of big tech and being parts of large deployments that are in those platforms. One, there's nothing wrong, right? It's like the old adage, like you never got fired for buying IBM.
Yeah.
Um, using a hyperscaler is great, right? Using your own data center is great. Using different things around the world, depending on the market, the technology, the business requirements that you have, that's what you should do. What we really believed in from sort of a foundational approach is that you should have the choice. You should have the choice to use what you want, where you want for those business or those technical reasons. And so I think one of the big differentiators that we have in terms of, not just being an IaaS, not just being a cloud, because we have all those things, is that we sort of let you pick and choose. You can mix and match. So a typical customer for us has their own data center. They're using hyperscalers for certain things. They might need some types of compute or custom GPUs or VPUs, or, they might need different network services. They don't need all those things in all the same places. And so I think a lot of the other platforms, they're very platform centric. They're like, buy everything from us. You're going to
Yeah.
be in our box.
Yeah.
And instead we say, look, what do you need to be successful? Right. And what problems are you really trying to solve? And how can we facilitate that? So we connect those things together and we kind of let you use all of them. So the things you just mentioned, if you wanted to come to us for IaaS, I need compute, I need virtual machines, I need managed Kubernetes, that's great. If you say, I want to co-locate equipment in some places, that's fine. If you say, I have my own data centers and I want to connect, those resources to those data centers, we'll do that for you. If you need an operations team to monitor those things, if you want, higher level services built on top of that, that's exactly what we do. And so that's really the core difference between all of those other platforms where you really
Got it.
don't have as much choice.
Yeah. Got it. Got it. Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying because there is a bit of a of a common refrain throughout the industry that we're hearing and presumably you are too, especially as you would be an alternative to a public cloud. And the common refrain is, you know, engineering teams, companies who are looking to move, again, I put sort of in quotes, move off the cloud. Now, in reality, they're not moving off the cloud so much as they're saying, we're looking for more flexibility, choice, in the way that our systems are implemented, operated, even something as simple as we want to implement VPU. And in a traditional public cloud, unless they've already done that integration work, like you, you can't go and knock on the door of, whichever cloud you're using and say, hey, by the way, I'm going to ship you 500 of these NetInt cards. I need you to install them here, here, and here. They basically go, no. And that's a real limiting factor. It's becoming a limiting factor. So people are looking for choice. Of course, there's a cost component. You hear that a lot. Hey, we're looking to cut, again in quotes, cut our public cloud bill, which is reality. Everybody's looking to save money. But a lot of times it's about that choice, which is why I find it interesting. And I'm guessing it's why you had such a successful NAB is that, you probably were meeting people who maybe initially were attracted by, some of your costs because they are very attractive, meaning they're very low relative to other offers. But it's the choice, I'm guessing. Let me ask you this question, and then I really want to get to the demo because I know some of the things you've got to show, and I think people are going to be really excited. But why don't you explain what your offer is with our VPUs? So if somebody wanted to deploy NetInt and they're saying, hey, I don't want to do it in my own data center, or I don't have data centers, or I'm currently on the public cloud, and exactly for the reasons I just said, the public cloud is not, or the particular cloud I'm using hasn't made them available. What are you offering? So what does that offer look like?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first, just on the price, you're 100% right. I mean, I think that, the public cloud, it has its purpose, right? But we all know that in some cases with how margin stacking works, you're paying 10, 15, 20x, right? What you could be. And so, especially when you have predictable workloads, I think you can save a tremendous amount. And there's a way to sort of have your cake and eat it too, right? To use maybe dedicated capacity, or if you have 80% consistent capacity needs, in a managed way where on a CapEx or OpEx model, you could, save a tremendous amount, and still get the benefits of a team running it like a public cloud. So you don't have to worry about, if things are on fire, I'm responsible for changing them in the middle of the night or fixing them. And I think we've taken that same approach to the NetInt integration. The first option that we have is we've released a full and a very deep kind of integration with NETINT VPUs on our IaaS. And so that means virtual machines. It means things like managed Kubernetes that you can spin up. And we've enabled that in all of our 45 global markets. And we are in the process of deploying that to a whole slew of initial sites in the US, Europe, Asia, and South America. And so some of these things are live today, which we'll get to see in the demo. And that lets you deploy, that compute resource and attach a NetInt card to it, to attach a VPU. And the performance there is amazing. I've been doing some testing, just comparing, normal CPU and different technologies to the performance you get on these things. And when you look at the performance and the cost savings, it's tremendous. It's magnitudes of, multiples greater than.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting because, generally speaking, in video encoding, if you're talking like compression gains, everybody likes to say, oh, 50%, but no one ever gets 50%. It's like 20, 25, 30%, which is still can be very significant. So that, but the point is we're talking lower double digit percentages. And when you're talking like 10x, it's like sometimes people go, wait a second, did you say 10 times? Like not 10% or not even 100%. So you mean 10 times? I'm like, yes.
Right. And
Like
and
it's,
even more so on the cost factor, right?
oh,
So you're getting that performance, but when you
yeah,
say the cost factor,
yeah,
I just ran a comparison that I think at the low end, it's 32 times better cost
yeah,
than a well-known
yeah,
public cloud
yeah, yeah.
uh, for doing
Yeah,
encoding.
we've run all those same benchmarks, and the beautiful thing is now, we have more than 200,000 cards installed and working in the field in data centers, and so now we have a significant amount of both official and sort of unofficial data from our customers. Unofficial meaning, they haven't said, "Hey, here's our exact internal findings," but they verbally said, hey, our internal findings were this or that, or, and it all matches. It's like, and it's beautiful when that's the case, because sometimes, let's face it, the modeled, the modeled cost savings or efficiency or performance numbers can be a little bit different than actual deployment. In some cases, customers are coming back and saying, you say 10x, but it's actually 30x, just like what you just said. And we're like, well, at some point people just don't believe you and the number gets so big. So we kind of said, you know what, 10x is good enough. So that's the number that we use in marketing. But Mark, why don't you, if you're ready, let's go ahead and switch to doing a screen share here and, show us some of the things you built.
Yeah, that sounds great. The other thing I'll say, just in terms of what we'll show you here, or what I'll show you is we'll deploy, as we're just speaking, we'll deploy a virtual machine with a NetInt VPU attached. I'm going to do that, and you can kind of get a sense for what we do. We have sort of infrastructure, networking, our global platform, observability, but you can see things like virtual machines, bare metal, colocation, which we talked about, storage, cloud, Kubernetes. I think one of the interesting things when it comes to our NetInt partnership is that you don't just have to use our IaaS. So if you have that use case where maybe you don't have your own data center or it isn't reliable enough, or you want to be better connected, we can co-locate, NetInt hardware for you. We can do custom, bespoke sort of bare metal in addition to IaaS,
I
and you
really
manage
want to
everything in one place.
Yeah, I really want to put a exclamation mark on what you just said because I know that there's listeners there or there will be listeners to this interview who are looking for exactly what you just said, where they need that hybrid. You know, they have their own data centers. They want to be able to flex, and they need a vendor. They need a service provider who can give them all of it, or they would like to have that, rather than having to go get a piece from, this company, a piece from this other company, and then operate still something themselves. And so I think that's a really unique differentiator. Not everybody needs it, you know, but those who do are going to be beating a path to your door, I feel. So,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
true. We're a one-stop shop. We're really, that team on the ground in all these markets, whether it's import, logistics, right? Cabling
amazing.
things
Yeah,
that can get that
yeah,
done. But, the power really is that you can combine that with
incredible.
the entire cloud platform. So as I'm speaking here, I'm just kind of going through the UI of our
Yeah.
portal. Everything is available through APIs, through different automations. And in fact, I'll show you something that I built with Claude where you don't even have to. It's amazing today. You don't even have
Yeah,
to click
I can't
things.
wait to
You
see
can
your
just
Claude. You gave me a
say,
preview of that.
yeah,
It's cool.
I want this. But what you can see here is, I'm deploying a machine. I'm going to pick up a NetInt card. I'm going to say, I want to pass it through. One of the things that we do is we let you sort of pick and choose your firmware. So whether it's your team, Mark, that's provided a custom firmware to somebody, or an update, you're able to do that, and it's very easy to apply custom firmwares. You can sort of pick how much memory you want, CPU, disk space. Go ahead and then pick an operating system. You can upload your own, obviously. You can use, even bitstreams, images. I'm just going to pick a test Ubuntu for this as we're speaking. Different networking options. Again, if you need to connect this, I think one of the advantages that we have in terms of our network, being the fourth largest network in the world, we are connected to almost every other platform, media company, in terms of a head end, in terms of being able to get things to affiliates, right? There's a tremendous amount of flexibility that our network offers you in terms of latency, in terms of cost savings over traditional methods. And so we give you a lot of flexibility there as well, to reach your customers or your partners. I'm just going to name this like test.vpu.com. Hey, that would be a good domain name. We'll deploy the server. And so on our side, this happens pretty quickly. I think a NetInt VM is spun up in, about 20 seconds. So while that's happening, I don't know if you've got any questions, Mark.
So is this typical, is this spin up time for a machine? You said 20 seconds. I noticed it said up to 3 minutes. What is the normal, kind of time that it would take? Let's talk about US, and then does it change if I'm in Latin America, if I want to spin up in Latin America or Europe or some other region?
Yeah, it really doesn't. The time average time is about 8 seconds for the resources. What ends up taking more time, let's say that you have a custom image or ISO or something that you're installing yourself, and you can stage those things around the world. But if you have to add time to install software and things like that, that
Of
can take
course.
longer,
Yeah.
of course. And so I just want to give a little brief overview of what it looks like in our portal and just how deep the integration with NetInt is. But one of the things that we expose once you have your machine up, you can do all the normal things that you would expect in terms of managing it, right? This is kind of like that cloud native functionality you were talking about. Every cloud has the same things, they just look a little bit different. You can obviously start and stop your machines. You can do things from the network and storage. We expose accelerators here, and so we show you what NetInt cards you have attached to it. We show you the firmwares that are available. If you're using virtual functions, we actually show you in real time some statistics that come out of the encoder, which is pretty interesting. And that is also tied into our observability platform. So you can start to get cost metrics and performance metrics over a fleet of machines that are deployed with NetInt cards, which is pretty interesting. And if you wanted to change the firmware, which I know you guys allow on the fly firmware changes,
Yes, we do.
you're able to do that right from our UI. And it's
Yeah.
as easy as, clicking update.
This is that option and feature right there is much requested. We all know it's when you're running something in production, updates, it can be problematic. And, you have to really be thoughtful, right, about how you do that. And there can be good reasons why someone may want to update to the latest version, may not. And in a handful of cases, we do have customers that have their own custom firmware builds, and that can be problematic in some of the traditional infrastructure as a service platforms where because of their business models, they need to kind of be running everybody on the same firmware. So
Yeah.
that's
The other thing
that's really special.
I'll touch on briefly is that, we deployed a virtual machine with a NetInt card, but coming out of NAB, one of the other things that we had some interest in is that you can deploy our managed Kubernetes stack and you can add nodes to your managed Kubernetes deployment that have NetInt cards attached to them. And that's pretty powerful because if you're using workflows or you have a stack that's, already like Kubernetes native, now you can say, I want to have, 10 NetInt cards accessible to these Kubernetes nodes. And you can expose them and then use all of your existing tooling for load balancing and managing workloads across, those cards. It's kind of a cool feature. I think that I haven't seen in the other clouds yet. It's mostly focused on just that core compute, not really on being able to have to be able to Kubernetes itself directly. So yeah, so that was a deployment from our portal. What is
Cool.
more exciting to me, probably, and I'll stop sharing that, is that we can do the same things just by talking to an AI assistant. And so before NAB, I think just a day or two before, it was Kenneth on your team said, hey, you've got an API. I had another demo that was using an AI assistant to deploy something. And he was like, well, can you do this with the NetInt VPUs? And the answer was absolutely. And so I think in less than an hour of just setup work, so just kind of saying to an AI assistant, this is what I want you to do. We now have a playbook that within a minute or two, and this is on our GitHub, you can download this and give it to your Claude code. You can give it to Codex or Gemini or any of your AI assistants and literally just sort of speak to it and say, here's what I want you to do. All right. Well, as you know, today, everybody is working in some type of AI assistant. And so
Yes,
I've
they
got
are.
Claude
Yes, we are.
up here with Claude Remote, and now with glasses and, your phone, you can literally, you can use Claude everywhere. Or Codex, or it depends. Use your favorite AI assistant, I like to say. But just before NAB, we put together a little demo, and this is public. You can go to our GitHub and download this, that lets you take really any assistant and then deploy and manage your NetInt VPU based resources on our cloud. And it also integrates with the Bitstream software, which is a pretty cool feature. Got that up here. We can see that we've deployed a NetInt Quadra based resource. We're at 0% load right now. So instead of going to a web UI, instead of manually creating workflows and doing different things, we can basically tell Claude, this is what we want you to do. So let's see. I am, not the expert, but I'm going to say create a new Bitstreams template here called live source, and we'll want to encode it with HEVC and some different resolutions and set a look at
Very cool.
depth.
Yeah, you're just using natural language, you know, no need to understand FFmpeg commands or
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's
it's
pretty amazing what you can do today. And so we can see here already, we've got a template created. We have a rendition ladder and it's ready to go. So one of the next things I think that would be pretty common is to create an overlay, to put your logo or an image on top of it. And so just a year ago, this would involve logging into something and uploading using a UI, clicking around. And instead, we can just ask Claude to do that for us.
awesome. And you're just using, I see Cowork here, um, which is just so incredible as obviously a lot of people are working in code, Claude code, but uh, more and more, I think people are going to the chat interface because A, it's easy, it's right there, it's accessible, right? So
Yeah, no, that's really true.
amazing.
It is, the more and more people, I like to say it's when your taxi driver is, telling you about something or your Uber driver,
Yeah.
it's ubiquitous, right? And I've had people tell me, they're asking Cowork to, you know, print labels for them and arrange like a FedEx pickup and it's working, right?
Yeah.
And so it really is amazing how accessible this is. And I could be talking to this instead of typing these
Sure.
commands or putting these commands in here, but because we're on video, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
You can see what I did just now. I create a new Bitstream session
Yeah.
for our demo, and I'm going to start a
And
Big Buck
Big
Bunny
Buck
portion,
Bunny, our favorite.
an industry favorite, yeah. And then we'll take a look and see if we can actually load the dash URL that
And
it.
let me I'm gonna make one comment just for the listeners and the viewers who may not be familiar with what Bitstreams is, because I'm gonna assume not everybody knows. So Bitstreams is NetInt's media processing framework. It's a very very nice graphical interface. It allows you to control multiple VPUs. It has all of the, I'll say sort of traditional features that you would find in a transcoder. And that's what he is controlling here. So if you're kind of wondering what's this bit streams, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's a great point. In fact, I'm going to stop sharing Claude just for a minute. And what I'll do is we're going to look at Bitstreams.
Yeah, cool. Because that's also something else that's really nice is, not only do you get the cards in the network, and you have all of the software and support that NetActuate brings you to manage those servers, you also get the software to be able to manage the VPUs, set them up, configure them, operate them without having to go to command lines. So it's a
Yeah,
real nice.
that's exactly right. And being new to Bitstreams myself, I think it was really cool to see just how accessible and straightforward it is, whether it's, understanding what's happening from a dashboard perspective or the hardware. And so, what we're looking at here is the Bitstreams software deployed on the machine that we use Claude to deploy. And we can see actually that,
And it's
Big Buck,
showing one job running
yeah, we've
or
got
one
something
session
running
running.
here. This is the session that we created. It's live. We can come in here. We can see it's been running for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. If we wanted to look,
Yep, there
save,
you go, big buck bunny.
running there. We can see our input details. We can see everything else. In terms of the template, we can also see, we had asked just our AI assistant to create this. We didn't do it in the web UI. But we can see here that we have our graphic overlay,
Yeah,
and the ladder set up, and it matches 100% what we asked.
incredible. Yeah,
yeah, so it's really, like I said, it's an amazing time to be alive and to be working on these things and just thinking about how accessible and easy and straightforward this
That's right.
technology makes things.
Yeah, and I love the fact that with Claude, you're just using plain language, just to describe exactly what you want, just as if you were telling a colleague or a coworker, like, "Hey, let's build, a profile. Here's the adaptive bitrate ladder. I suggest these target." You just describe it, right? Except you describe it directly to the MCP, and then it does it through bit streams. It's incredible.
It's tremendously powerful, right? And so this is the Dash resource I'm running it in VLC here, and we can see that it's running. But I think this is a very simple demo. We're just doing one thing. I think, where the power really comes into play is you can say, I want to spin up 20, VPUs. I want to encode this. I want to, I've got this live event happening. I want to be prepared for that, and it's that power where, in the past, I mean, coordination, technical resources, operational people, engineering, you have to make sure all these things are in place. This puts this in the hands of, anybody, a business person, a production manager, somebody that doesn't need to call IT to make these things work. They can just talk to their assistant, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's tremendous.
Yeah, this is cool. I had the opportunity to see this as I think you had just finished it that morning at NAB, and yeah, that's when I said, "Okay, we have to schedule this interview. You have to show it." This is just really game changing. I mean, that word gets used a lot, and sometimes, if everything's game changing, nothing is, right? But this is game changing. It really is.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, a kind of funny adage from being there at NAB is that somebody wanted to see the demo, and I was just walking by. I said, "Sure, let me take out my laptop," right? And I started to open it up, and several other people came around. They were like, "All right, let's look at this." And he's like, "I'm gonna get a cup of coffee." And he just stepped away. He just walked, 5 or 6 feet away, got himself an espresso, and he came back, and the demo was over, right? Because we had used AI, we used Claude to say, this is what we want to do. And everybody was
Yeah,
kind of blown away. And it was that fast, right? And again, it's that accessibility combined with the power of what you can do with the VPU, right? That I think is something that's really special in this industry and transformative.
percent. Yeah, totally agree. Wow. Well, so what else? Is there something more to show, here?
I think this is a good, stopping point. This is
Yeah,
just an initial teaser. Like I said, I
it's
think that
incredible.
there's so much more that's possible when you consider, in our case, right, the
Yeah,
45 plus global locations, the
yeah,
access to the network, the low latency that we have to whether it's your partners or your customers that you need, and then the infrastructure that you can stand up. So your use case might just be I need one VPU and I want to do some encoding or transcoding, right? Your use case might be I need 1,000 of them, right,
that's
for
right.
for an event. And it really doesn't matter. It's just as easy as what you saw here, to stand up one as it is
Yeah,
to stand up 100. And that's what we're really excited about in terms of our NetInt partnership. And, really going back to what I said uh, about, how we operate as a company. I mean, we're successful because we're a team player and we like to work with smart people. And I think we've really found that with NetInt and what you guys have brought to the market.
that's awesome. Well, Mark, thank you for coming and telling the story of NetActuate, but giving this demo. I am sure that the viewers and those who are listening are already, the wheels are spinning as to what they can do. So hopefully you'll be getting some calls and some emails and some contacts. We definitely will have you back. And I know that we're working on some exciting things together. And, maybe here in the not too distant future, we can talk about them publicly. And we'll have you come back, do some more demos. But thank you again for coming. It's really amazing what you built.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark. Like I said, we're really excited to be part of the VPU ecosystem, and excited to work with all of you. And if you want to come check out some old hardware, that standing invitation is available. We'll have you out to our headquarters in Raleigh, North Carolina, and
Amazing.
maybe compare philosophically, where things were
Yeah,
25,
where
30,
things
40 years.
were. And it's really fascinating how hardware is obviously the technology has advanced, the capability, is advanced, right? But hardware is coming full circle, right? 10 years ago, it was like hardware encoder. We're so beyond that. We do everything in software. And now it's like you're still encoding in software? Not the best way to do it. So it's
Yeah.
amazing.
It really is. That's such a great point. I mean, even when you think about things like, virtualization, I mean, just go
Yeah.
back to mainframes, right? From
Yeah.
the day. So
That's
yeah,
right.
things have come full circle, but it's the combination of all of this that, make the time that we're living in, truly transformative. And
It
for
really
me, it's
is.
really about, enabling that communication, and allowing, our mutual customers to be successful at what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, good. All right. Well, to all of the listeners, thank you from the bottom of my heart, our heart here at NetInt, and all the guests that we've had on. If it weren't for you, well, we'd just be talking to ourselves. And so thank you for coming, week in, week out, listening, sharing, liking, contributing. If you would like to come on the show, reach out to us. We do get a lot of requests. Unfortunately, we're not able to accommodate everybody. But if you have something that, you think that the audience for Voices of Video would be interested in, then let us know and we'll see if it's a fit. And if it is, we'd love to have you on. So, as I always say, until next time, happy encoding.